I'd like to call the Tuesday, April 9th meeting of the Community Police Review Board to order. It is 5:30 p.m. So can we have a roll call, please?
Downing.
Here.
Okay. Jensen.
Here.
McConnell.
Here.
Meckes?
Good enough.
Meckes.
Thank you.
Saul.
Saul. Yeah. Remington.
Here.
And Townsend.
Yeah.
And I would still say her. Say Hobart.
Oh, Hobart. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Okay, item number 2. Consider a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
So moved. Second it?
Okay, we don't need, that's all right, we don't need a vote at this point. Discussion about the consent calendar.
I will not be on the 11th, on May 11th.
Okay,
May 14, you mean? May 14?
May 14th, yeah, sorry.
the May meeting.
I thought it-
Okay,
And then I won't be here in the August unless we change it.
June's my last one, I believe.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
your term is up.
First, yeah.
Second?
Yep.
You
No,
and
first term.
Orville.
First one, okay.
Yep.
Your terms end. Amanda and Orville.
Okay.
Nope.
I
How
think
many
you
times
just
I
gotta
gotta,
know.
I don't know how many times I gotta say nope.
See, you got this. You don't need me.
No, I do.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, go ahead and have a roll call. There's nothing further?
Hobart. Jensen.
Yes.
McConnell.
Yes.
Saul.
Yes.
Remington.
Yes.
Townsend.
Yes.
And Downing.
Yes.
All right, item number 3, new business. So we've got on here for new business, question, looks like it was Saul's about Iowa City PD's process for determining when a mental health liaison is called to assist during the call. Chief, could you speak to that?
Yeah. So, as you know, we now have 2 mental health liaisons, and we have about 16 hours of coverage today, 15 to 16 hours. I think they have an hour of overlap. Joe works in the morning, and Katie works in the evenings. They're issued radios, and right now they're on their own. They're not with the co-responder. This summer we're headed to at least one of those will be a co-responder. So we expect their numbers to go up. But they listen to the radio and listen to what types of calls for service are going out, and they self-dispatch on many of the calls they go to. Otherwise, they'll wait until an officer, because as we've talked about, the calls don't always come in super accurately. You know, the call taker's trying to figure out what's going on, and they title the call. And then when the officer gets there, they try to sort through what actually is happening, and if they think a mental health liaison is necessary, then they'll call them. But oftentimes, my experience is the mental health liaison are listening to the radio, and they'll hear something like, oh, that could be something that would be worthwhile, and they go. And then, as you know, all of our officers are trained in crisis intervention, so they're pretty decent at the very least, identifying someone in mental crisis and then getting them the right services, whether it's our liaison or calling for mobile crisis if our liaisons aren't available. I think mobile crisis responded to about 1,200 calls for service. Those certainly weren't all called. I think most of those were called in to them directly. But our officers will also use mobile crisis, and they've really done a fantastic job of improving their response time. Prior to it's been a couple of years that they've really upped their staffing, but that was a chronic complaint from my officers, that the response time was very delayed because they would be calling someone from their house and it could take 30 minutes. And by that time, the officers typically would have handled the call and moved on. But now their response time is much quicker, so the officers are much more apt to call them. And sometimes they remain at the scene and wait, or sometimes the scene is safe and they can move on, and then mobile crisis will just take it from there.
The reason why I asked for this item to be put on the agenda is following the, and I'm not sure we can talk about following the last.
Probably not.
Okay, a particular incident in which one particular individual was involved, in more than 30 calls and all emergency calls, and it just seemed to me that after 2 or 3, that there ought to be, that the social worker would have been called, much less, after more than 30 times. So the police is caught between being criticized for not being competently able to handle such a situation, but on the other hand, social workers are absent. If they are listening on the radio, they really should have been there. So do we need to request more social workers, or I suppose as a group we could do that before the city. What has broken down there?
Well, one thing I can tell you, and not just talking in generalities and not specific cases, but certain people that we've engaged many times, those people have been engaged by our mental health liaisons. That does not prevent, we can't prohibit them from calling the police again. So I can tell you with our, for lack of a better term, frequent flyers, our chronic users, they have been engaged multiple times by our mental health liaisons and sometimes by mobile crisis separate from our mental health liaisons. So we do, because we notice that. I get the calls, our command staff gets the calls and say, we need to connect this person with services. And we do, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's the challenge with people in crisis, is sometimes they accept services and sometimes they don't. Sometimes we're very successful and sometimes we aren't. So again, speaking in generalities, I can tell you that people that we deal with on multiple occasions will be connected with our mental health liaisons. And they're almost every time that I catch wind of it, I send one of our mental health liaisons an email and they're like, oh yeah, we know this person's name and we have dealt with them many times and they may be service resistant, or we're working through some issues with them and getting them in touch with the services that they need. So we do that. Whether or not you might see on a specific case, you might see a mental health liaison on every single one. You might not see them on every single call they're involved in. It could be an availability thing. But they will have engaged with those people.
I would definitely say that I think that there is work to be done as far as long-term continuation of care, because in my experience, what happens a lot of times when they connect you to those services, that's handing you a piece of paper and saying, here are places you can contact. But I was just talking with somebody at EcoFest at the rec center last weekend who does energy audits. And he says, yeah, we tell them one time that we can come in and do this free energy audit. We don't hear from them again. We call them back the next week and say, hey, have you taken any steps with this? Do you want us to set up an appointment right now for you? Then they get this higher rate of people actually taking them up on that. And I think that's the piece that's missing, is that ongoing follow-up. Because yeah, there will be people that just don't want services regardless of what we do. But I think that there are people, if they're dealing with executive functioning difficulties, mental health difficulties, lack of basic needs and things like that, following up on something like that and actually getting yourself to the point where you're receiving those services can be very difficult. There can be a lot of barriers.
So that's what the mental health liaison does. And that was always our complaint about when we were trying to, officers are really good about knowing which organization may be best, but we're not doing the follow-up. We don't have the time to do the follow-up. The mental health liaisons do. It's not a one and done type of thing. They'll go out and deal with it that day, they'll contact them the next day, they continuously do follow-up. And that's what they have the time to do, and that's where we've seen benefit from that. Because you're right, we go hand them a sheet of paper and they, that might not always be, it often isn't very effective. But those mental health liaisons will continue to follow because that's what they have the time to do.
I think the mental health liaison is an excellent initiative, and I'm hoping that we can find a way to show its value, because when budget cuts come, these kind of programs are the first to go, but I think this is a program has quite a bit of value. I was just thinking though, how do we show or keep statistics to show, and I haven't come up with anything that I could recommend, but to show, compared to before we had this, the people that went to jail, now they don't go to jail, they go to get the help that they really need. Is there any way we can factor something in to show the value of it? Maybe a start date before this is what happened, and now we have this is what happens.
It's hard to quantify things that we've avoided, So one of the things we've been looking at, I've talked about this with council, is doing studies to see how many calls for service a particular person had prior to engaging with mental health liaison or mobile crisis. And then seeing, okay, typically they called once a week. And after they were engaged by mobile crisis or a mental health liaison, did that go down? I think that's one way we could do that. But I have no doubt that mobile crisis and our mental health liaison have prevented many calls for service, but it is hard to quantify. There are ways to do it.
It's hard to measure things that don't happen.
Right, or things that were prevented.
There were things that were prevented.
But there are ways to do it. We do studies with the university. If we get our data analysts, those are things that we would certainly assign that person to do, because I think there is value in that. And we want to be able to show what they're doing without just saying, I'm pretty sure they're, preventing calls for service.
It just dawned on me that the city council basically has an important decision making in this, so can we keep this on their plate so that they can be aware of exactly what's happening, because I'm sure that they are aware of what was happening before this, but I have no doubt that this is going to be a successful initiative. So I'm just hoping that we can keep it on the city council's plate so that they are aware of that.
And as a former social worker who did protective services in Cleveland, Ohio, some people are not going to accept help, whether it's an alcoholism problem, a mental health problem. And the problem with mental health is if people don't agree to get help, you can't make them get help once they're 18. And the only way to make anybody get help is to have court order. But I'll tell you, my most resistant one ever was a police officer who was referred by his higher up for domestic violence. He came in his uniform, his gun, and he sat there and he didn't say one word. I was like, okay, you don't have to talk, but I do have to write a letter to your officer. So in that kind of a situation, when there's an order, you have a little bit more help. I just am cautious about thinking that mental health people can just go out and take care of it and police aren't needed, because police are needed. And the referrals just need to be very careful.
I work for vocational rehabilitation, citizens with disabilities. And, it's like when it came to disability, all the services were available, everything was available. The biggest thing that we could never solve is individuals who will not take their medication.
Right.
And you can't force them to take it. And if they don't take it, then behavior is unpredictable.
I don't disagree with anything that's being said, but I just wonder, was that kind of what you were getting at, your question? About how they're engaged and kind of how that happens?
Yeah, it does, but I'm still concerned about a few points. Well, one of them is the enormous amount of resources, for police cars and all of that could be needed somewhere else each time, or numerous times, more than 30 times. And number two is that there are children involved. We're lucky that they were not involved directly, but could have been involved. And after 3 or 4 times, we're all guilty in the sense that we knew this was continuous, and this is the 30th time nothing has been done. So if somebody from the outside hears that more than 30 times were called, nothing was done, now the children are in trouble. Why hasn't something been done? So, I don't know where, it just seems that the police is not, that's not the police job. At some point, if these people were, as is being suggested, you can't make them do things, well, if they wanted to do things, then they wouldn't need the help. The reason why they need the help is they have to be told, look, you're going to lose your children. These are the consequences. So it's not just, okay, we raise our hand. It's just, there are consequences. You either do this or this is going to happen.
That's all Health and Human Services purview, though. That's not the police department's purview.
So just so you know, without speaking of specific cases, Department of Human Services is involved in those cases. We get them involved. We refer to them constantly, and they engage these people where they can. And if, in extreme cases, they may have some high-level involvement, and some they go and do home checks.
But at least you've reported to DHS, and I'm wondering whether they're really doing their job.
But Saul, I think it's important that we keep in mind, when we're dealing with mental illness, it's a totally different ballpark.
Yeah.
You talk about consequences. With the average person, consequences work because they know that they're doing wrong and they can control the behavior as to whether to do right or wrong. When you're dealing with mental illness, especially an individual that's not taking a medication, this person is out in la-la land. I mean, you'd be surprised of the individuals with mental health that go on these episodes, and then when they find out the behavior or the harm they've caused afterwards, they have no clue of it. All they can have is remorse. But it's nothing we can do about it. It's done. If the person doesn't take the medication, you can just about bet that there's going to be some negativity involved.
I wonder if we aren't talking about, well, we are, the larger issue of mental health services and resources in general. Not only, the increased need in the city, but in the county, in the state, in the United States. It's not just,
And I think the value of this initiative when it comes to mental health is before we start focusing on it, behavior is not acceptable. There's a consequence. You go to jail. If someone's trained in mental health and they see that it's a mental health issue, then the person doesn't go to jail. The person goes to get the treatment they need so they can get the medication, and then they can get back in the mainstream.
I just think your concern about society wondering, well, why hasn't something been done? I think that usually comes through social media, and I think that part of our responsibility is to explain, this is how it works, here's what can be done, here's what can't be done. And we can't solve everything. We can't solve everything. And we have to be aware of our police officers and the mental health workers' safety also, with anybody allowed to have a gun anymore.
But just the fact that we are making our police officers aware of this and giving them training, it's a big jump, because just think of all the cities well, this doesn't happen, and these individuals just end up going to jail.
We good? I just, unfortunately, it's not something we're gonna, you know, I agree with the program as a great tool and resource, but we're not gonna be able to, good discussions, you know, and our support for resources, but we're not gonna be able to solve it, unfortunately, here.
But I think
So we
it's,
could-
but I think it's good that it's there, we know it's there,
Yep.
and we can applaud the, the city council for helping to make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 4, old business.
Oh,
Nothing?
Can
Yeah.
there is another item I'd like to bring up, while the chief is here, and ask about an update on the legislature's attempt to do away with the board, with the police review board. If there's any update on
Oh,
that?
no, that
We
didn't
can't-
pass.
That's
Yes.
already,
didn't
that's
pass.
already, it didn't pass, and then
Okay.
it didn't
Well,
make it through the
it didn't
second.
get,
That
it
takes
passed
care of
the
that.
Senate, but it was on
Yeah.
erroneous information. I had emailed Janice, and she
Okay.
Yeah.
emailed me
Yeah.
back and said it won't come up this
Yeah,
session.
that did not make it, that bill.
Okay, the third item.
Okay, this is new business,
Under
and
new
these are
business.
things that were not placed under new business to talk about.
Okay, so,
I just have an error here on the attendance record sheet. When you look at my name, you go over to next to the last bracket, and I'm not quite sure what that is. This is right here.
Got your,
I think
I
that
wonder if
E
that
is
was
supposed to be a,
OE,
yeah, I think 3 is supposed to be an E.
which absent excused,
Okay,
so we can
There we
update
go.
that.
all right. Thank you.
okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, if it's new business, we should ask for that to be placed
For the next-
on new business for the next meeting, not to talk about it.
okay,
When we're on number 6, yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
we're not there yet for next meeting. So, okay, looks like no items for old business. So can we move on to number 5, public comment on items not on the agenda? Sir?
Well, it sounds like the board has already dealt with this, but I was concerned about the legislation to abolish review boards. And I'm aware that the Senate passed it,
Yes.
and that members of the House wanted to tweak it. And it is going to be introduced next year. Did the board, I see that you were aware of this, did you do anything? Did you write a letter to anybody? Or are you on your toes when this comes up again? I was just concerned about this and wanted to express my concern as a citizen about the future of the board. Is there any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you. We were aware of it. I was contacted by a reporter. I know the city was as well. And they obviously talked to a number of various individuals. So as far as would it come up again, it might. It very well might. I wouldn't be surprised. But we did not write a letter that I'm aware of. However, that's certainly something that somebody could do, you know.
Well,
I
something
thought you were gonna
that
say something,
somebody
Julie.
could do isn't much of a plan. Have you been in touch with the city commission about the future of the board?
I have not. I can't speak to the rest of the board members.
I talked
Or Kelly.
to the chief,
Uh-huh.
and he said that the city manager was very aware of this, and that we
Mm-hmm.
had a liaison who was working with our representatives.
Yeah. So, yeah, as individuals on the board, we, there may be a liaison for the city, but as individuals, if we would reach out, I got contacted because they were looking for they were looking for comment. Yeah.
Reporter, though, I feel like, am I correct in thinking you're talking more about legislative
He's talking-
advocacy?
yeah.
Like the board writing a letter to legislators
Well, that
about
was
it?
the thrust of my
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
And apparently there is a liaison. Could you tell me who that is or how it works?
You have to have some
Between the
chief.
city manager and the legislature?
Well, I know the city has a lobbyist.
Yeah.
It's a lobbyist.
Yeah.
So
Did the city lobbyists take any position on this?
I don't know.
I think the major issue here is whether or not the city wants to continue having a review board, and if they do, then, you know, they have the resources and mechanism to put something in place.
Well, I beg to differ because the establishment of the board is in the city charter. So it's up to the state. It's up to the Republican majority in the Senate and House as to whether or not to permit review boards in Iowa. And I'm concerned about this, and I was just seeing if there's any concern among board members.
So I'm going to jump in here real quick. Technically, this is something that should be added to the agenda
Yes.
next week. We're not supposed to engage, in discussion with people from the public in
Okay,
this
then
section of the agenda,
I'll-
so we could add it to the agenda for next week.
I would like to. Something that I think needs to be done a lot more often is explain the reasoning for that. City commission, city board, city council are not supposed to respond to public comment that was not on the agenda because the rest of the public has a right to know that we're going to have this conversation and be here and hear it themselves.
fine.
So it just has to
Well,
be
let's put it
published
on the
ahead of.
agenda for next time.
It has to be published ahead of time, and I just think that people should know
Yeah.
that that's why, because it can feel really cold when you don't get a response and you don't know why.
So we'll talk about it next time.
I hope I can make it.
Sir, could we
May
get your
14th.
name too? Could we get your name?
Dean, D-E-A-N.
Abel?
Abel, A-B-E-L.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking my comment and putting it on the agenda for next meeting.
All right. Item number 6, board information.
So that. The legislative
All right, I
discussion.
added it.
Whoops. And then did you have another thing to add?
Yes, and there's another thing. Yeah, I'd like to have some kind of certificate honoring Tammy's dedication to our board. So I wrote a note to Connie about that. She printed some formal thing. That's not, the wording is not, can be changed. But something similar to that, honoring her work for us. Do you want to see it?
I already saw it.
And you're right. Thank you for bringing that up.
When it does come up, the wording can be changed. I mean, that was just a suggestion.
Thank you.
I guess
Thank you.
first thing I would ask is this something that's appropriate, that's within the boundaries of something that we can do?
We did it last time, I believe. I remember doing something.
Yeah, we've done it before, and I don't think it's anything that needs to go on the agenda. If everybody's fine with the wording, we can
Okay.
just do it.
It's fine with
Looks
me.
good to me.
Yeah, looks great. Good job, Sal.
Do we need a motion for that?
Or a roll call. Okay, anything else?
How do we proceed with this then?
Well, the way it's set up, I would sign it and give it back to you, and you would distribute it to her? Is that how we, okay. Okay,
And it's gonna be on
Your paper.
cardboard, something more.
Yep, a little bit nicer.
Well, there we go.
Thank you.
Anything else? Board information? Staff information?
I'll introduce Connie McCurdy.
There you
She's your
go.
new staff person for the commission. I'll be here for a few meetings while she gets settled in, and then she'll take over.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. This is the part where you have to give a speech, right?
She didn't say anything about that,
I
so
didn't
I'll
give her
pass.
Well, I'll do that to you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Information here? Nothing? Okay. All right, the tentative meeting schedule, that was item number 8. I think we have the notes from earlier about who is and isn't gonna be here. Are we okay with rescheduling? Do we need to reschedule if one person isn't here? We need, as long as we have a quorum,
They're gonna be done in June.
unless you
I'm not.
re-up.
No, I'm not. I'll be here
So,
May and June and then I'm done.
Well, I'm just saying, let's say they both don't re-up. It's only 4 of us.
We would advertise the
Yeah.
vacancy
Oh, okay.
beforehand.
Beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
In hopes
Yeah.
to fill it, so somebody
Yeah.
would start in July.
Yeah, I mean, I won't be here in August, so if you guys wanna reschedule it to, or later, or earlier, whatever.
Fine with me.
We okay with leaving it, or just thinking about, how,
last meeting. I would be in June.
yeah, if it's one person gonna be gone, unless we have a couple vacancies, we could leave it, as is for now.
And then
And
check
see
it, maybe you
about
can check it.
yeah,
next
and
week.
see about the
Okay.
vacancies and
All
then
right,
look
sounds
at
good.
moving it if we
Yep.
need to.
In the minutes for city council, they listed an application needed for one new member for the board. It just said one in the minutes in the paper. That's what I was curious about, because I knew there were going to be 2.
My council agenda, I'll have to look.
Okay.
Okay. No, we talked about conflicts, we talked about changing the meeting. Don't need a motion to change dates, so we're good that way. Can we get a roll call?
Oh, you don't.
No changes are necessary.
It just, okay, it doesn't say anything about it, there's no changes, if we're just it just says roll call. Sorry, okay. Just following that. Need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
You got a second? All right, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, need a motion to set the level of review on complaint 2315 to 887B1A.
So move.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Oh, sorry. On complaint 2401, need a motion to set the level of review for 2401 at 887B1A.
So move.
Second.
Second.
And then I will move to summarily dismiss 2403.
Okay, wait a second. Everybody in favor?
Oh,
Sorry, you go. Everybody in favor of 2401?
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you. All opposed? Okay, there we go.
Now I will move to summarily dismiss 2403.
All right,
Second.
motion and second, all in favor? Oops, this one's, yeah,
That's fine, voice vote's fine.
voice vote will work.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, item number 10, need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Who moved it, who seconded?
I did.
You moved?
Amanda?
Okay, I
Okay,
move.
thank you.
Yeah, either way. Yep.
All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you.